Hi, everyone. Welcome to ADAC virtually. My name is Katie Olson. I'm with Architectural Digest. I'm the editor of AD Pro. If you're not familiar with AD Pro, you can check us out at arcdigest.com/AD And today I am here in our virtual Janice at Sea showroom. Just kidding, I wish I was. I'm actually in my apartment in New York City. But I am here to kick off our conversation. So we're gonna start with a big thank you to ADAC, who's our sponsor, and Janice at Sea, who's also our sponsor. And we're gonna kick it off with a video from Janice at Sea.
It is a collection that embraces the poetic qualities of an authentic Japanese garden. The rigid rock forms and the flowing sand patterns that juxtaposed create a unique language of visual tension. I'm dreaming of a tranquil sense of place, a place that inspires reflection. We have worked really hard to create a unique texture for the wood, somewhat depict the texture of the rock. I see rock garden being at home, being outdoor, as well as being indoor. It's a really poetic collection that transcends culture, and I believe the collection will be us in an urban metropolis environment, somewhere that is still, quiet.
Beautiful. I felt transported. I hope you all did too. I would love to introduce you to our guest of honor today, Matthew Patrick Smith. Matthew Patrick Smith is an acclaimed interior designer. His work evokes an enduring traditional sense of style, which is appropriate. There he is, classic and unpretentious. He's known for his intuitive understanding towards a larger character of space, but he never loses his fine eye for detail and light. Matthew was recently named to the elite Elle Decor A-list of the world's top designers for the 10th year in a row. And he has his own collection of fabric and wall coverings for Schumacher and 2 rug collections for Patterson Flynn Martin. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for inviting me.
So we're looking at your beautiful book today. So this just came out. I would invite everyone, it's such a stressful time. We're dealing with COVID. Let's all leave our worries at the virtual door, and we're going to have a little escapism today. Thank you to Matthew for that. So I would love to hear a little bit about the book. I've heard that some of your own photography is woven throughout the pages here. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. This is my second book. The first one came out about 10 years ago. And when I was thinking about doing a new one, I thought, what's different from now from 10 years ago? And the obvious thing is Instagram and iPhone. I mean, it's changed the way we all work, the way we look at things. So when I first started using the iPhone and using the camera, it reminded me of when I was a self-taught amateur photographer in high school. I thought that was going to be my career path, photography, and then I got sidetracked, luckily, and did interior design. But it brought back a lot of the skills that I knew as a photographer that also I realized I was using as a designer. So I started taking pictures and putting them on Instagram. And then when we got the idea for the book, I thought, can we weave these images, which probably serve like a mood board or some in my subconscious that show up in my projects later, can we weave these into the photographs of my interiors that were taken by real pros like Simon Upton and John Gruen. But so that's really how the whole thing started. So it's a mixture of my photographs with my interiors.
Absolutely. Oh, I was so excited to get my question started that I forgot to point out to all the attendees that if anybody would like to submit questions, we would love to take them. You can use the Q&A chat feature, and then that way at the end of our presentation, you'll be able to have your your questions answered by us. So again, feel free to use the chat Q&A function and let us know of any questions. Wonderful. Well, these images are beautiful. So what we're looking at right now, it's really a mix of photos that you've taken and Instagrammed, right?
Photos I've taken on my travels, but also, the upper corner here, the black and white, is my bathroom here. So I didn't have to go far for a lot of these photographs. So there's Mumbai on the lower right, and then Amsterdam, the woman in red, and Cooperstown, New York on the upper right. So a lot of things were just randomly as I saw things.
Absolutely. So that we don't need to go that far, right?
Right, exactly. It's usually right in front of you.
So your own house in Connecticut is in the book.
Right.
Here it is. Why don't you walk us through it? How you know, in the book you mentioned specifically, quote unquote, you explore how to use a modern frame to highlight furnishings and objects from other periods and places. So the house is modern. Why don't you walk us through your process for designing it?
Sure. I was originally, my last house was a 1790 house in the village. But I always wanted the challenge of taking a ranch house and seeing what I could do with it. Because I grew up in upstate New York, there's the land of ranch houses. And I just thought someday I want to get my hands on this and see what I can make of it. So I was actually, I was just always looking through real estate ads, and this house had been on my mind for a while, but I wasn't that, it wasn't that I wasn't interested. The price was too high. I wasn't looking for a project. And then I saw it one Saturday morning, and the price had dropped a lot. And I called my friend Elise Harney Morris, and I said, "What's the story with this?" And she said it was, it's an estate situation, and they need to sell it right now. And so I went over that day and I bought it that afternoon. And I knew I had to change everything about it. I knew it was a complete renovation from top to bottom. But I fell in love with the site. I fell in love with some of the architecture. It's a deck house, which was a group of architects in the 70s had been manufacturing and selling. But it needed a lot of work, a lot of attention. But when I did it, everybody said, it was a 1975 house. Everybody said, well, you're going to do mid-century, aren't you? And I said, what, that's really not, that's not what I'm about totally. So I wanted to have a touch here and there, but I love antiques and I love, English furniture, Irish furniture, like that Irish console there. And I just thought, I need to blend it in. So to stay true to myself is what I love to do as a designer.
Are there any favorite pieces that we're looking at right now?
Well, that Irish console there, right in front of the big mirror. That's, a lot of what my book is about is like full circle. The photography coming back. It's like I originally did that, and that's how I got into FIT with my photography photograph to be an interior design major.
Oh.
But that piece there, because I went to FIT. I didn't know what to do after college, and I applied to FIT, and they said you have to do a portfolio review, and I didn't have any. So I drew my room, and then I took my photographs with me. And when I got to the auditorium at FIT, the students were walking in with scale models and mechanical drawings, and I thought, here I'm going to be on the bus back to Middletown. This is not going to work. But then I saw the teachers were going through portfolio to portfolio, and they got to mine. They asked who it was, and I got up there, and they said, "Your portfolio's weak, but we see something in these photographs, and we're going to take a chance on you." Mm-hmm. So that's how I got started interior design, getting into school first. But that console there was, I worked for David Easton for about 6 years, and I started my own firm in '88. And that was the first important piece I bought for a client. It was from Florian Papp Antique Shop. It was an Irish console piece, and I loved it. It's always been my favorite piece of furniture. And then when I was finishing my house, the client called me and she said, we're scaling down, we're moving out to the Hamptons. We have no place for this console. We know you always loved it. Would you like it for your house? Mm-hmm. So my favorite piece of furniture, the first important piece of furniture I ever bought for a client, ended up in my house. And
lots of full circle moments, and it's circular too, so that's kind of a nice.
Yeah, nicely. Everything works nicely.
So, how did you choose the color palette for this house?
Well, it's a series of. Ironically, it's the same square footage as my old house, but it's really 5 rooms. And I just thought the only way to keep this connected, and I wanted something different from my other house, which absorbed furniture, and it was charming, but it was a very different house. And so I thought I need to keep the backgrounds quiet and keep the architecture strong. So I just used the wall color and the beam color are the same color throughout the house, and then I just slightly changed the trim. But that's the one thing that connects all the rooms of the 2 colors,
including the bedroom, right?
Including the bedroom. And this is right here. This is where I'm sitting right now in that chair, that green chair. But that was the former garage to the house, and that I converted into what's really my office now.
So from 1740 to
1790 to 1970, okay. And from in the village into the woods. and I'm so happy here. I can't tell you. I mean, I was just so lucky.
Oh, here's the bedroom. So yeah. Interesting. How do you keep the bedroom feeling fresh? You're using the same kind of 3-color palette throughout the home.
Well, when you're doing that kind of color and you're keeping the backgrounds simple, it's really about the objects you put in front of them. And it's also about making sure that what you put there is of quality and of interest, or something that amuses me. You just can't keep filling up walls. So it's been very good to me, because somebody who's inclined to buy things everywhere I go, it was very good to stop and say, do I really need this? And is this going to look good in the house? So it's been a good exercise. But these are things I had in the other house. These are things I've had over the years that still remind me of my trips and my travels. You know, the brass piece of the sailor I found in Istanbul, and the ivory piece I found in India. But it's so things. I still keep things around me. I'm not sort of. I'm not getting rid of things that I love, just to keep it simple. And the bathroom, I always wanted a bathroom with like a walk-in shower, door that has a beautiful view. You can see Persia there, that over the tub. And luckily, I'm in the woods. I don't need any window treatments, and nobody's out there. So it's been great. It's a very different house coming from the 1790 house. And this is my partner's office. And
what's that artwork in the back left?
that's an unknown artist. It was it's called outsider art. And I thought it was brilliant. And I have no history on the artist. I just loved it. And then over here is James Brown piece, the tall piece. And there's James Brown, and the triangle is a Bruno Romeda sculpture. And there's a few pieces. Bruno Romeda was a close friend, so I have quite a few pieces of his in the house. And and this is the view. Behind that cabinet in the last picture that's also where I watch television. That's the TV back there. But it's a tiny room, but it serves a lot of purposes.
And then
this is my view. Yeah, it's been a wonderful spring and summer here, and the leaves are about to change. But I'm not that worried, because when the leaves go, I have a really beautiful mountain view there. And having lived in village houses for so long, this is sort of a treat to be out so much so much privacy.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And this one, when I bought the house, this was all brush. We had to literally burn it to the ground and start all over again. Every surface in the house was touched. People thought I was crazy when I bought it. And I didn't think I was. I mean, because I bought it so fast, and I sort of believed in it. But now I look back at the before pictures, I thought, what were you thinking? How did you? But I'm glad I did it. Sometimes you just have to jump in it.
Well, you had a vision, and I think speaking of vision, will you walk us through the process of choosing which of your images were chosen for the book? How did you choose the placement? I know, having worked in book publishing, it's a big endeavor to put together a book like this. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your image selection process.
Well, I picked out the images that were my favorites that I've done over the years, and I worked with Doug Tertian, the art director, on this, and he had a lot of input. And what I love about doing the process of doing a book and doing interior is working with people who really know what they're doing. We don't have, I don't have to be the expert of everything. I just have to know that who is the expert, so I can work with them. And Doug is the expert right here. So there was a few pictures that I didn't agree with and I changed, but mostly I went with his suggestions. And like I said, these pictures don't necessarily, directly relate to every project, but you never know what's in the back of your mind, Yeah. And
so this project is in my favorite magazine, which is
and I think you can see it on AG Pro.
Yes, you can. I can connect people if they're interested in seeing it there. So this we published in 2016. This is with architect Peter Penoyer, and it appears in the book under the chapter Sense of Place. So tell us about this house. You and I had spoken about this earlier, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of this gorgeous house.
Well, originally my clients bought a house on this beautiful piece of property. It was a great old house, but and they really wanted to keep it, and they hired Peter to do some studies, and it really didn't work. They lived there one summer, and also the house, when it was built, people really didn't think about where the kitchen was in those days, so they really wanted things to turn around. The way we live now and the way families function in a house is so different. So eventually, after one summer, they realized they had to build a new house, but they wanted to keep a lot of the detailing that was in the original house. And Peter is so sensitive to that. He's one of the best architects I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of very good architects. But I love working with Peter because he's really sensitive to what the client wants, and he has such a great sense of history. And when I finished this job, and when he finished the job, then it was turned over to me to install the furniture. I was walking through the house with a lampshade or something. I'm thinking, I kept forgetting it was a new house because there was so much charm from the original house that he brought back, like this doorway and to that half door that goes out to the water. And so there were things that were in the original house that are still here, strangely enough, but they're new and they function.
So that brings up a great question. As the designer, you come in as the designer, and what are some design tricks? I hate to use that word, but how do you make a house that is new have this kind of layered feel? There might be some emerging designers on this call, or even some people who are established who could benefit from those tips. How do you make a new house feel lived in and
Well,
historic?
well, it's also about getting to know the client, and luckily, this client has lovely taste. She has a very fine eye, and I've worked with her before, and she, so I knew what she liked, and she also, sometimes you have a client and they know exactly what they don't like, but they give you free range of what they do like. So with her, it was really, I've already worked with her before, but you have to incorporate some things, but that maybe from the period when the house was built, the main thing is about adding patina to a house, whether it's with furniture or artwork, or just some layers so that everything's fresh and new, and then balance it with some new pieces. And I think that just keeps it feeling, keeps the aura of what it was before.
Yeah, absolutely. So switching gears on the same project, how, being that I'm at AD, I get a lot of questions about how to get published. And I'm wondering, from your perspective as a designer, how is photographing for a magazine like AD different from, just general room photography or project photography?
Well, when you, as a designer, you never know, I keep telling young designers, don't get upset if your project's rejected. I mean, you don't know what's behind the scenes as far as, do they have similar houses coming down from the same area? Is it a similar look they've already done? You don't know what the focus is. Every editor has a different idea of what they want for their magazine. So what was architectural might not be the same as veranda or El Decor. So, if you have a project that you think is right for a magazine, submit it. Because, you never know, that they might be looking, that might be a gap they're trying to fill. But if you do get it back, that doesn't mean that it's not good. It just means they can't use it right now, and then move on, try to get it somewhere else. But as it's just a matter of submitting it and hoping that that it clicks for their needs. And every magazine is different. And then photographing it is just, every magazine has a different style. So for this magazine, a lot of editors have their favorite photographers because they deliver, and stylists because they deliver what they want. So in this case, I work with Howard Christian and Peter Estison, who did the photography, but Howard Christian did the styling, and they knew what to bring back to their editor. And this was an interesting room because the only furniture piece that we kept from the old house was the settee, that wicker piece, and we didn't build the arch for it; it just slid right in. So it's just that worked out nicely.
Meant to be. Oh, and this is the deck. So I love that little bench to the left.
Yeah, that was something the client fell in love with that too right away, and it was from upstate New York. It's just a quirky piece that doesn't even really, like one arm sways in a different direction. It's a little off center, but it has so much charm, and that's what this is what I mean about adding patina to a house. We have this more contemporary. It's not contemporary design, but modern bigger pieces. But when you start adding something like that bench, it blends in with the goal we're trying to get of building up some history.
Yeah, another layer. For sure.
Exactly.
So when you're, I know most of us got smartphones, in 2007, I'd say. I think I got my first iPhone. How have you found over the course of that time since you started using Instagram, are you drawn to the same kinds of scenes? Has Instagram and using a smartphone changed the way that you're taking photos? How do you interact with the app, and how does it inform your design sense?
Well, I think I probably am. I'm interested in strong graphic lines, and I think this is a good example. This layout that you have here. I'm first drawn to the line, whether it's a curve or an angle or structure. Being a designer, of course, architecture pops up right away. But it's about the light too. It's always about the light with any photography. It's about how the shadows are being cast. But I think, with the iPhone, it's been great because it's so immediate. You have it there all the time. You don't have to worry about setting it up. And, it's changed the way I work and what I shoot. And it's also drawing me to detailing much more than just walking past something. I'll just, and often you just have a second to take the photograph and then it's gone. Earlier we saw that woman walking up the stairs in Mumbai. Well, if I wasn't fast, she would have been gone. So it's about constantly thinking about what you're seeing around you, and moving on the opportunity.
Well, what's that middle one, the top middle?
That's under a bridge in Paris, walking along the quay.
Is everybody else salivating looking at these travel photos, or is it just me? It's been 6 months without being on a plane.
I'm so, I've been shooting the woods and up here, but I'm anxious to get back. But time will get us there.
Yes, you need skyscrapers, right? Well, speaking of skyscrapers, this is I believe this is now an Upper East Side apartment in Manhattan, a townhouse, right?
Yep. This was an apartment I did for a young couple with teenage kids, but early teenage kids, and they had another apartment uptown that was where they lived while the children were born and growing up. But they wanted to move to the next level of apartment, something a little bit more elegant, a little bit more, a little bit more grown up for them, because you have to evolve with your clients, and then you have to, things change, and you can't be locked into one look all the time. Things have to move. As your clients grow up, you grow up, and that type of thing. Mm. So this was when we found this apartment. This was a estate condition apartment, and there were actually, you couldn't see this beautiful curve of the staircase. It was covered. That was closets. That really came to the edge of the staircase and cut in and came straight across. So you didn't even know that was under there. And Charlotte Worthy, the architect, she's an architect I work with. I brought her in to get some advice, and she said, what would you think about taking out this closet and let's get a plaster person in here and make this beautiful? And it changed everything.
I wish we had a before photo.
I know. It was so claustrophobic and tight. And in fact, there was a wall that went right straight up the stairs. So you didn't see the banister all the way. So it was really lost. It was totally lost. You would not know any of that was there.
So this is a complete renovation of this home.
A complete renovation, yeah.
How did you, I know there was one little tidbit that you mentioned in the book about how, I think you had 6 of these Danish Klizmos chairs and you needed 8, and you worked with a cabinet maker to kind of fill in the gaps there. I think that's a great example of old and new. And I'm curious where else that contrast appears in this project.
Well, in this book, we have, what was good to Gina, the client came in with a few pieces of her own that were family pieces. Her husband's grandmother was had a wonderful collection of English furniture, so we have that scattered about in various places. And her mother had some beautiful French pieces that like this pair of chairs. And but then we have the more contemporary cabinets behind them with a contemporary light on it. So it's all about the balance. It's just not having too much of one period. There are the chairs we were talking about, and so it's all about balance and proportion and appropriateness when you're doing this.
And speaking of this, the dining area here, tell us a little bit more about that brass chandelier. So that's solid brass.
It's a piece by Jacques Jarige, from the Valerie Goodman Gallery. He's one of my favorite artists, furniture designers. Mostly he's an artist, and that is one sheet of brass. It's a brass sheet that he cuts into piece strips, and then he folds it over and then starts moving the arms around to create this chandelier effect. So if you took that and you just laid it out and pressed it out, that would just be one solid sheet of brass.
Incredible. Really works.
This is a piece that we kept from her mother. And then we found an antique piece mirror to go above it just to balance that out. But what's nice about dealing with antiques, and I tell young designers to not overlook this. When you're ordering everything new from a showroom, you pretty much know what it's going to look like when it's finished. When you're dealing with antiques, you never know. You could find a piece that throws you in a different direction, and it's all about that uniqueness. And I find it more fun because sometimes I'll do a room and I'll sketch what it could look like ahead of time, and then when the room's done, I realize it doesn't look anything like that because of these various wonderful pieces that have changed the course of the project.
Oh, absolutely. I think in a day and age when everybody can just click and buy an entire showroom.
But it is so much fun to go out there and find something that somebody else doesn't have because it's only one.
It's that layered look that we were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And here's a little bit more contemporary. This is the kitchen area, and that's where the kids do the homework. And the client also has a nice eye for art, and she loves shopping for art. So those 6 pieces. Ironically, I was in Nantucket doing a panel discussion a few years ago. And it was during an antique show there, and there was a dealer from London who had those pieces. So I walk in, I see those pieces, I think, I wonder if she'll like that. And she came to the lecture, and it was over. She goes, "I want you to see these pieces." So so that's where they came from Nantucket via London. So you never know where you're going to find something.
And at the left, what piece is that? I'd love to hear more about that.
That's a piece that her husband had in his other apartment before they were married, and they've kept it. I'm not sure who the artist is, but it just had great color and scale to it.
Oh, it's stunning. It's really stunning. Beautiful.
And we didn't purposely match the dog balls. That sort of just happened naturally.
I like that.
I know, right?
It shows that there's life there. You'll notice that in the pages of AD too. You know, we don't shy away from showing real life. You know, dogs have to drink too.
Exactly. In style.
So we're looking at some more of these Instagram images again, and I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how you edit them, and maybe you could walk me through what's your thought process. So we talked a little bit about your thought process in terms of putting the book together, choosing those images. Is
Right?
it the same kind of thing when you decide what to post on Instagram?
Well, it is. I take a lot of pictures, but you don't want to waste people's time looking at a mediocre picture. And when I started doing taking pictures of Instagram, I realized, you want to make sure whatever you present on your Instagram page, because that is your public, vehicle for showing your work. You want it to be the best it can be. So you want it cleaned up. You want to make sure it's straight. You want to make sure the color is right. You want to make sure there's enough contrast. You just don't want to it's almost like the same thing you would do if you're selling an antique piece to a client. You don't want to send a mediocre picture to them to buy something, so it's about, making sure you're presenting the best you can do at the time. So these are just pictures that I felt. The top three are Paris, and the women's set that's from London Museum. The middle one on the bottom is actually LA.
Oh wow, I never would have guessed.
So it's over Chateau Marmont, and you can see the LA skyline in the background.
Oh, I was thinking Sienna, but I didn't look. I didn't look too. Now
I know.
this.
I love telling everybody that's LA. And then that's from my client's house. I was just installing a job, and I walked out, and it was there. So I just shot it. And then and then that's a little bit of architectural detail is just on Riverside Drive and 105th Street. I was just walking down the street. So like I said, you just never know. There's opportunities to take a good picture everywhere. You don't have to go far necessarily.
No. And how about do you use any programs for editing, or do you use Instagram?
I use what's on what comes with the iPhone. I don't download other apps. I just, I get the contrast, and I brighten and lighten as I could, because so many times I've pulled over it and I've seen a beautiful picture and I've taken it, but that it doesn't have the dimension when I look at the photograph. So I've got to get it back to why did I stop and take this picture? So you have to play with it. It's like getting a picture, like a photographer would get a negative in raw film. You have to bring out why you stopped and the reason you took the picture.
Absolutely. And do you think about the grid at all? How each one interacts with the next?
I do because I used to work that way when in high school. I learned the grid, and the grid still works in my interior design. In my elevations, the grid is part of what I do. Mm-hmm. So there's you can't be locked into it. Sometimes I'm off the grid, and that's fun too. But like anything we do in life, especially with interior design, when you know the rules and you know what works, you can play with it after that. But you should know the ground rules first, and the grid works. But there's no reason not to take something that's off center and doesn't conform with that.
Master the rules so you can then break.
Exactly. Sure.
Speaking of mastery, this room is a show house room, right? And this is mastering a mix, I would say, right? We're looking at items from different furniture, pieces, art from different eras. I would love for you to walk me through this room. I wish we could virtually or literally walk through it, but we're going to virtually walk through it.
Yeah, this is a room I did at the Holiday House for breast cancer research. And it was, when I did it, I took it on it, and I was a late person coming into the show house. The editor called me and said, somebody just dropped out. I'm going to press tomorrow. Can you do me a favor? I wasn't planning on doing another show house.
Wow.
And so I said, can I have to sleep on it in the morning? He said, of course, I'll do it. So I went in, and then I just thought, if I'm going to do a show house, a room like this, I want to have my favorite pieces from different periods, going back to Regency, English Regency, right to mid-century modern, like that chair, that Edward Wormley chair, and contrasting it with the David Duncan antiques of the Swedish pieces in the front there. So I have a real mix in this room, and it was really, I love that Anglo-Indian settee up there in the corner. I've always wanted one for myself, and when I had this idea of mixing as many periods as I can, I had really great fun doing it. So you start thinking about how the woods relate to each other and how the periods relate and the quality of the pieces, and that's what ties it together.
So yeah, how does history factor in? Have you always enjoyed history as a designer? How does it play?
Yeah, well, that's how I got into the industry. I grew in upstate New York, and there were no interior designers upstate New York. I don't think, in a 90-mile radius, you couldn't find an interior designer where I was living. but I didn't know what to do. I was finished with school. I'd been a theater major, a business major. Um, and I was all these various job interviews that were not taking off. But then I met these antique dealers who invited me to dinner one night, and they had a man who was weaving carpets and blankets for a designer in New York. And they had been to New York that day to his office, and they saw these scale models of this house he was um, building in Lake Forest. And they were talking about it was a perfect Georgian house, and inside, but it had all the 20th century conveniences of air conditioning built into the crown moldings, and how beautiful it was. And I thought, what kind of job is this? I mean, tell me more. So I started doing research. The designer was David Easton. So I started doing research, and back then there was no Google. So I literally went to everybody's house to see what Architectural Digest magazines they had. And I went looking for David Easton, and I also saw who all the names were. I started realizing who were the players and what did they do and what the look was. And it was all Architectural Digest for me at that time. And then I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to go to New York. I'm going to narrow down what I want to do. Stop fooling around. I'm going to be an interior designer. What do I do next? FIT was a school. And then back to that story about trying to get into FIT. And then David Easton came and talked to our senior class, and he reviewed my portfolio. And a couple of years later, I went to work for him.
Wow.
So
another full circle moment.
full,
Would you have any advice for designers who might be listening in now, who are just starting out? And obviously we have Google today, but maybe there's something to be said for picking up the magazine, or maybe there's some books that you can recommend people who want to get educated on the history that's really apparent.
oh, sure, there's a lot of good books. The first book I ever bought was the New York Times book on interior design by Norma Skura. And I remember I was working for this woman, and I told her I couldn't work. I was leaving to go to FIT, and she said, "What are you going to study?" I said, "Interior design." She said, "Oh, I have my cousin does that. Have you ever heard of Mario Bawada?" Yeah, I just bought a book, and he's on the back cover. You know, so that's a really good book. If you can get your hands on that, and you can get that on eBay and Amazon, that's a really good book, because it's, you know, you'll see who the people that influenced everybody today. You know, nothing starts in a bubble. It all comes from someplace. And you can see that sort of the history of interior design just in that book. Some of the Billy Baldwin books are good to read. The David Hicks books are always great to read. So yeah, there's a lot out there. And I think I would encourage designers to go back, young designers to go back and look at some older books to see where what we're doing now, where it came from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now we're back to our Instagram.
That's from 42nd Street in one corner down to Mumbai on the other.
42nd is top. Why don't you walk us through? 42nd is top left?
Right, that sort of in the rain, that's 42nd Street. The rain falling down on, you know, my camera. And then that's a fire alarm box waiting for a taxi. A cabinet in London, and then Cartagena, Mulberry Street downtown,
Yep.
and then Mumbai.
Beautiful. So how do you harness all these inspirations from these different travels? How do you think they usually appear in your work? Is it usually a piece that you use, or a color, or?
I think it's color. I think it's scale, proportion. I do think it's you know, so yeah, I think, you know, a lot of it, you know, this is a section of the book that's called drama, and I do think that that can be a key element in interior design. You know, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be in your face, but it does, for certain interiors, it lends itself to have a sense of drama.
How do you integrate that sense in a way that feels?
Well, you know, it's about, you know, maybe turning the volume up on a color or the scale of a piece. You know, it's just about, you know, taking not being afraid, you know, just going the next step, not pulling back, but also keeping under control, because then it can turn into chaos. So it's, you know, you just want to, you play with it, and then you know, maybe, you know, that old-fashioned device of adding, you know, keep taking something away here and there. So it's
the Coco Chanel theory for taking up jewelry. I think that was her.
exactly.
This is a Tribeca loft, and
Yeah.
we talked about this the other day. I would love to get more into it. That beautiful image, the back right. Maybe you could tell us how that came to be.
Well, I needed something for that wall, and my friend Peter Marginelli, the photographer, he takes a lot. He does a lot of interior shots, but he's also a travel photographer, and does quite a bit of traveling. So I went to the studios. I was going through his archives, and there was a photograph that he had taken in Mumbai years ago through a long deserted photography studio, like somebody would go for the portrait studio. And there were samples of in the window, and the shop had been closed for years, but there was a small picture, maybe 8 by 10 of this woman, and it was covered, the shop was covered in cobwebs. And I fell in love with the image, and I worked with Peter and we blew it up to that size and then separated it into 9 pieces. And if you get close to it, you can see the cobwebs from the store, and probably there, some cobwebs. But what I loved about the piece was it was just so beautiful, but also that each square could be a photograph on its own. It didn't necessarily have to be together. And I just found that unique. And so, you know, it was just an experiment we did, and it worked.
Yeah. Are there any other found objects, maybe in this project or throughout your work, you know, things that maybe you've stumbled upon the same way that photograph was stumbled upon, a photograph of a photograph?
Yeah, you know, like this piece here, like this headboard, I saw that years ago in Kent, Connecticut, in Artifacts, a shop there, and back in the warehouse, just in pieces. I was always fascinated with it, but I had no use for it. I mean, it was so big, and what would I do with it?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was doing this room, I just realized that, you know, the bedroom needed something extra, not just a headboard, just another headboard with a piece of art over it. It needed something, a little bit more attention to that than that. So I went back and looked at the piece and bought it, and had it assembled and put that dark gray mirror inside. And so you never know what you're going to find, you know. And then you quiet it down a little bit with the night tables and my carpet for Patterson Flynn Martin on the floor. And so, you know, sometimes you find things over the years, and then you go back and things always stick in your mind later, the idea or the concept. And also when I see pieces, I think, what can I do with this? Like this desk here, that was a steel drum from Artifacts also, and that we cut in half. And then we put the 2 pieces on an S-curve to make a partner's desk. Now for Workshops, did the top for me and lacquered it in that brick red color.
Oh, it's stunning. Do you have any tips maybe for some of our emerging designers who are, how do you find your sources? I know that's a hard question. A lot of
You know, it's hard, and it's harder now than it used to be, because you know, when I came into the industry, there was so many antique stores in New York and London. You know, we'd go to London when I worked for David Easton, we'd go 3 or 4 days. I can do it in a day now. So it is harder, you know, it is hard to find things, but, you know, there's so many websites, First Dibs, you know, luckily the internet has brought things into more our realm that we didn't know about. I do find it's important to know a piece and to be able to see a piece. So if you know, I have a rule in the office, if we can see it, if it's near us, we have to see it before we buy it, because that changes everything. You know, you can't really get, a lot of pieces you can't tell the scale until you see it in person, even with the measurements, it just doesn't look right. So, and I also, so you find your shops that you like, and then you know, just keep a list of their websites too, and keep going back to them and see what they have new. But it's also about getting out there. It's about going out to Stamford, Connecticut. It's about going to Hudson, New York. It's about traveling, finding things at the Paris Flea Market. You know, that's the fun thing about the job. You know, we just keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the living space within that same Tribeca project. So maybe you can tell us a little bit who this was designed.
No, but this I'm sorry, this is a Park Avenue apartment. This is the contrast to the other apartment. Okay. And this is a room I've done over a few times. It's for a family on Park Avenue. It's a room that's sort of very elegant. You know, she has also fine pieces from her family, but she also lets the boys and their friends hang out here. So she wanted a room that, you know, we have sturdy fabrics on everything, but, you know, she's not afraid of letting them watch television and hang out in this room. But she still wanted an elegant room. She just also wanted to be, you know, to have a sense that it is a beautiful room and to appreciate it. That's a piece from her grandmother that she kept. I love that piece. And this is, you know, same apartment, fabulous painting. It's, you know, and then just in this case, because of the painting, we just keep the background simple. So that pops out. And, you know, one or two fine pieces of furniture, that's all you need.
Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous. So as someone who is thoroughly apathetic towards sports, however, I grew up in Queens, so I am a huge Mets fan. I appreciate this room. This is for the Ronald McDonald House out on Long Island, which I know is a cause near and dear to many of our hearts, many of us in the interior design industry. So tell us how this came about, and then I want to ask some business questions around it.
Well, you know, I always, you know, I keep saying I'm never doing another show house, and then So in this case, Tony Barada, we were judging a contest, interior design contest, and he mentioned that he had done a Ronald McDonald test about 25 years ago, and it was getting tired and had to be redone. So he was thinking about bringing designers in to take different spaces and upgrading the facilities there, bedrooms, sitting rooms, everything. So I went out to see, I said I would do it. So I went out to see it, and I had done, I've done in my career so many sitting areas, bedrooms, everything. But I walked into this room, it was called the Mets room, and it was all these white painted walls, which is like a couple of posters, bad decals on the wall, an old fashioned television, and just broken up furniture. So I just, when am I going to get the opportunity to do a New York Mets room? And so we had three choices. I put 1, 2, and 3 Mets, Mets, Mets. And they called me back and they said, "We were shocked you wanted that. We're thrilled. Deal, please take it." And then I had to do it because Yankees is easy color wise, Mets is hard. So it was getting this all together. And so I was working with the marketing team of the Mets, but that wasn't that helpful. So I decided I was just going to do it myself. So I started designing it, and I bought everything on eBay. Those pennants are all vintage pennants I found online and had them framed. I came up with strip molding, building this, these architectural details around the room. And in the upper corners inside the little boxes, you can see the little MYs, which I found somebody on eBay who sold me for the baseball caps, the woven pieces. So I just tacked those up there. For the wainscoting, I did baseball diamonds. And then I had then I had to find a carpet, and that wasn't easy because orange and blue combinations, and orange, blue, and white was not an easy combination to find. So I went up to where I live here nearby in Canaan, Connecticut. And so I was looking through his books in the back, and I was getting rashes from these things. It was just, nothing was working. So he finally said to me, what do you want to do? What are you using this for? So I said, I'm doing the Mets room. And he goes, why don't you just use the Mets carpet? Which the marketing department didn't even know existed. So he pulls down this book, and it's all the teams. And there was the Mets carpet. Like, it was meant to be. I mean, if I had not gone into his shop, I would never have found that. And that sort of just pulled everything together. And so it was a lot of fun. What's nice about doing this is that, it stays forever. There's still, Carrie Kravitz called me, and he had been there about 6 months ago, and she said it looks exactly the same as when you left it. Wow. Everybody loves it. The kids love it. The parents love it. It's one of the most used rooms in the house. So that was really felt good. It wasn't something necessarily about me, it was something that you can leave behind. It was really nice.
Something for the kids. So how does your approach differ from when you're designing for, a charitable project like this versus designing a show house versus designing a residential project for a private client? How does your approach change?
Well, when you're doing a normal show house, so say like a Kip Space show house, that type of thing, it's about, when you get the assignment of your room, you have to go out and find what's available then. And find what's available and who lends you what, for that period of time. And that sort of dictates where the room's going a little bit. In this case, I knew it was going to stay. So everything that was here had to last long. It had to be sturdy. It had to be function. It had to be comfortable. Sometimes with show houses, it's more about, somebody comes into a show house room and looks at it for about 20 seconds and leaves. But this is going to last years, hopefully. So, that's the biggest difference, I think, between doing the two. And with clients also, it's much more long-term about what you're doing for them. And with show houses, you get to do, it's sort of different because, you're your own boss with a show house. As long as you love what you're finding, you call the shots. Right. And it's also different with a show house. Sometimes I often think I could see a room 5 different ways. So I walk into a blank show house and I think, this is hard because, I'm not the client. I don't have a client here. And what do? I know all the options. So how do I narrow this down? Yeah. So, but with this room, it gave me, it was about the Mets. So it had to function around that. And clients usually come in with their, usually you can get a read on the client, which direction to take a project in. So, they all vary, but it's, we're lucky to be in this industry. So.
Oh, yes, we definitely are.
Not a problem.
Well, we wanted to show, this is Janus at Sea, right?
Yeah, this is a house I did in Florida with everything from Janus at Sea on outside. And, I thank them for sponsoring this. It's one of my favorite companies to work with. Their customer service end couldn't be nicer. And everybody that works for them, I've met everybody from LA to Milan at this point from Janus at Sea. And they've all been super helpful. Our industry is very nice to begin with, but they go the extra yard when you need something. but also they, I love their product line because it keeps evolving. There's something, but if you want something very traditional or semi-traditional to super modern, they have everything. And they keep changing, as we saw from the video earlier, they keep changing and they keep inviting exciting designers that I may not have known of before, but who are doing very unique products. So it's always a joy to work with them.
Absolutely. Well, we are now ready for questions. I've got some great questions that came in. So why don't we start with, so our first question is, do you have before images for your house? We probably don't have those today, but they also ask, they would love to see them, and wondering, how did you deal with the design process? I guess the question is before, taking the before, going to the after.
Well, with the house, it was, it's another similar problem when you're doing your own house, that you know so many options and which direction you take it in. With this house, I had the extra problem with the very strange ceiling details. I didn't know where the supporting walls were. So when I bought the house, I took down all the sheetrock throughout the whole house because I was going to change that anyway. And then when that came down, that's when I decided how the room's going to be. I had to add a little entrance hall, so because before you just walked right into the living room, so I had to create another separate area so that it wasn't so direct. And it was about going there every, I was still working all week. It's about going every Saturday and Sunday morning and just sitting in the space. And, and I'm so glad I took my time, because I bought the house in like October, I guess it was. And I didn't start construction until February. And I just took my time with this since it was my own. I had to take time. I had to work. So, I couldn't really give this as much time as I do a client's project. But I'm so happy now, having spent, because of the situation now, I've spent the last 6 months here. It works, and I'm happy I took my time.
Absolutely. So we have another, this is a great question. Whoever asked this, everybody's names are anonymous, so I can't shout anybody yet. But this is a very journalistic question. When you look at your first book and then you look at your new book, how has your work changed over time?
That's a really good question. Well, the first work is, I came out 10 years ago, so it was work that's about 10 years before that, within 10 years there. I've grown up, I've evolved as a person. I've, some things are more important to me and less important to me than they were before. I think my editing process is different, especially for myself. This house has lent itself to a new experience. I wanted a totally new experience. And I think adding the level of the photographs to this book, I think, gave it extra depth. The first book I love, I'm not putting down my first book, I love my first book, but this is a little bit more evolved. And I think it explains a little bit more who I am as a designer and as a person.
Do you think, just kind of piggybacking off of that, do you think the evolution of the smartphone and social media photography, has that changed? Did that play a part?
Sure, it's changed everything, because we're now taking our work and we're putting it out there for everybody to judge. You take a picture, you're making a commitment. Before it was sort of a private process what you did, but now when you put it out there, you have to expect there are going to be people who don't like it. A lot of people will like it, hopefully, but you have to think about, okay, I talk about, one of my teachers in art school said, why? Like when I would do a painting, it was more about, is this good? Just ask yourself, is this good enough? And I think I do the same thing with my photographs now. And and a lot of things when I pick out now, and as far as shop for or look for, does it work? And is it good enough? Is a big question I keep asking myself.
What a balance, right? Designing for Instagram, designing for yourself, designing for
I know, and for clients, but it's.
I don't envy you, it's hard work. So this is a great question. When COVID is over, where will you travel first? And importantly, what will you shop for?
The first thing I would do, I keep changing my Paris ticket. I think I've changed it 4 times already. I'm sure November 18th is not going to work, but I will go right back to Paris. But I think I will never take for granted being anywhere in the future. Now when this happens, I will max out every trip I go on. I still want to discover this. I don't really know the Scandinavian countries that well. I want to do that more in depth. I want to go to Africa. I want to go back to India. I have a dream someday of spending 3 or 4 weeks just traveling through India, and hopefully I can. I just missed a pitch. I had to cancel Japan because of this, so I will put that back on hopefully put that back on the table. I've been lucky. I've been lucky because I've had a lot of really good trips. take advantage of Christmas time, because usually with clients, they're busy and you can disappear over Christmas. So every year at Christmas time, I was lucky. And I also think you have to move on trips. I was lucky because I was one of the last Americans in Syria before the uprising.
Wow.
I thank God I took that trip. I mean, I look back and I can almost cry that, I thought I was going back many times.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of places I want to go to, but I also want to go back to the places that I love, like, France, Italy, and in the United States. I still have a lot more to see in the United States. That is going to come back. That's going to be something I do right away. Start traveling throughout the United States more.
Are there any items in mind that you have that you want to shop for while you're abroad, or even just while you're out of, the Northeast?
Well, yeah, I do. I want to go back to England. I want to go back. I see this trend. I have wonderful young clients coming in now, and they want antiques, and they want good antiques. They want fine antiques, not necessarily the highest level antiques, but they don't just want the run-of-the-mill stuff. And I'm looking forward to going back to London and to Dublin and shopping for antiques again, which is something that is why I came into the industry. And it seems to be coming, we keep talking this full circle, it's coming back again. And I'm looking forward to taking advantage of this new wave that I feel is coming this way towards me, of having unique things, handmade things, and interesting furniture.
Oh, absolutely. I was reminded, speaking of social media, you can have your kind of your memories pop up over, this happened 5 years ago. And I was reminded that 5 years ago at this time, I was in the Cotswolds in England doing an antiques tour at Lorford's, which is a really unique airplane hangar housing all these different antique vendors. And it's sort of cruel and unusual punishment to be subjected to these memories. But I have faith in that.
I get those also. And what I also get is the things that on my agenda that I was supposed to be doing that day.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the theater that's been popping up that I'm not going to, I said to my office, can't you take this off? It's just too cruel, but everything will be fine, and we will be enjoying this more than ever someday.
Absolutely. Have you discovered any, on that same note, have you discovered any shops or news sources during this kind of downtime, this grounded time? Maybe there's something new near you that you found?
Yeah, I've been going back and forth. Hudson, New York keeps changing and it keeps evolving. And it's amazing how it's, in the last 10 years, how it's taken, it's amazing how in the last 2 years it's taken off. It's always been getting better, but now there's quite a few sources up there that I like. I'm also finding through Instagram, I'm finding people who are making things. I've spent more time on Instagram being here, and I'm finding some sources of cabinet makers and unique artists who are making pieces that I'm hoping that I can incorporate pretty soon when this is over. Not even before, I'm working now. So I've made new connections that way. So you never know what you're gonna find on Instagram.
On the balance, do you feel that this kind of COVID, I don't want to call it downtime, because as you said, you're working, we've been hearing that at AD, people are really working these days. There's a lot of projects coming in. The importance of home has just skyrocketed since we're all here all the time. I'm wondering if you had to categorize this time in these last 6 months of basically, quarantine or something like that, would it be a creative time? Is it more of a productive time? Where have you been focusing your energy during this time?
Well, the first 2 months are a blur. I think I've realized what's important to me in my life. And I've realized that I have to let go of certain things. In a way, not having a big office in New York, I'm realizing, do I need a big office in New York? So it's made me think about what's important to me in the future. And it's given me time also to connect with friends that when you're running, I was constantly running. I was going to the theater 3 nights a week. That's what this thing keeps popping up. That was too much. Maybe I need to slow down. I needed to, before COVID, I didn't spend more than 4 days here in a row. And maybe I was just rushing too much. Maybe, if I wanted to find a positive side to this coming out the other side, is that, it gave me a chance to reevaluate what I want in the future. And I feel good about it. And I've connected more with friends. I haven't seen them, but we talk a lot more. And it's more, it's been important to keep in contact, especially in the early days. So yeah, I do think, I think my life is gonna be better when this is over. And I think it's because I took the time to think about it.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds a lot like the photograph editing process, right? Whittling down, or even just design. How do I whittle something down so what's really meaningful, what's really important kind of shines through, right?
Back to the art teacher, why, so what, what's, So think about it again. Just think about it again. Make sure you're just not rushing to. I said to my office, from now on, we're gonna take our time with the project. We're gonna make sure it's perfect. We always do, but I don't want the pressure anymore. I just want to make sure that everything is right, if I can.
We have one more question.
Sure.
The question is, what should new designers spend the majority of their time on? So business, research or conceptualizing, relationships. Has anything changed over the years?
What's changed over the years is that, I keep telling the designers, you really have to get your young designers, you have to concentrate on your business end. It doesn't matter how talented you are, how creative you are. If you can't get it delivered, you won't have the clients. And we're not a designer if we don't have clients. So make sure the foundation of how you work, the accounting, the order processing, everything works. That has to be your backbone. Then you can start being creative and designing. But without that, it doesn't matter. Your clients are not going to be happy. They're going to be frustrated. Things are not going to show up. You're going to get crazy because you're going to getting all this pressure. And that's the hardest part, is keeping. I always say it's 80% business and 20% design. Most of the people in my office are doing processing orders, tracking deliveries, billing. I mean, there's so much paperwork to it, and just find the right people. You don't have to do it yourself. You don't have to be that person, but find the right people who can help you do that. And I think that's the backbone. And once you have that under control, you can take off from there.
Absolutely. Similar to the book, right? Finding the right partner, the right creative director.
Always.
Wonderful.
I always say that designers, you don't have to be the expert on everything. We talked about that before. We can't know everything. Under the umbrella of interior design are so many different things we have to worry about. But like a movie director, where they bring in the best cinematographer and script writer and lighting person, actors and actors, you have to just keep that in focus, but you let everybody do the best they can do. And that even goes right down to the bookkeeper. You find the best you can get at the time and just apply yourself to that. And then client relationships are also, with all the magazines I've been in, most of my projects come from word of mouth from clients. And sometimes from people have hired me from word of mouth from a client from interior they never saw. So it's, you keep your clients happy, that spreads goodwill, and that's how you build up a business.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, we are out of time. This is such a pleasure, Matthew. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for asking me to do this. And also, I just want to say to everybody at ADAC, 10 years ago, when my first book came out, I was invited down and I spoke in person. And I'm sorry, I'm glad we did this. This is great. But I was supposed to come in person. But I hope that when we clear the woods that you invite me back. I'd love to come back again.
I would too. I was there last year at this time. Again, one of those little memories that popped up. And I have faith we'll make it back there again soon.
I think so. Looking forward to it, but please invite me.
Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Jesse. Thank you, ADAC. Thank you all for attending. And I look forward to chatting with you all soon, hopefully more in person.
Thank you, Katie.
Bye.
Bye.